Good morning, everybody. Meteorologist Jim Dickey here in the ABC 7 Hurricane Center with another edition of Tracking the Tropics. It's Friday, September 13th. Right now, we have no named storms out there in the Atlantic as I'm recording this, although technically we have potential Tropical Cyclone 9 sitting over the Bahamas. We'll get to that in just a second here. Three areas to watch, of course, at PTC 9, and then two waves in the eastern Atlantic, moving pretty quickly. Let's begin there briefly. I want to touch on both of these, but for the most part, we're going to focus on what's going on in the Bahamas and the threat there rather than these, because we have a couple days before these impact any land areas. So the westernmost of those waves, you see a little blow-up of thunderstorm activity in that first circle on your screen. So yeah, it is showing some signs of perhaps powering up a little bit. No organization just yet. There's too much wind shear in play right now for that to try to come together. But by the time it gets east of the Windward Islands, estimates would have the chance to come together. 40% chance for the Hurricane Center, so a medium shot at that. As we get into Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we'll be watching this closely as it nears the Windward Islands and works its way into the Caribbean Sea. Some indications are this stays fairly far south. Some indications are this could miss the Caribbean entirely and turn to the north. So again, we'll be keeping an eye on it as we do all tropical waves move off the coast of Africa this time of year. Here is potential Tropical Cyclone 9. See it swirling there over the Bahamas. I'm not sure why we lost the ocean, but so let's talk about this name. I put a long-winded explanation on my Facebook page as to what potential tropical cyclone means, but you have to remember that every low-pressure area in the tropics is a well-defined center that takes its fuel from warm ocean waters. A warm core system, as it's called, is a tropical cyclone. That's the sort of overarching technical definition. Hurricanes, tropical storms, tropical depressions, typhoons are all tropical cyclones. Of course, not all tropical cyclones are hurricanes. They have to hit that threshold to be considered one. But again, that's the overarching name. And potential means it's not there yet, but it's expected to be soon. So let's look at the satellite imagery, and I put a lapse on this for you. At least it should be a lapse. There we go. Seeing some signs, again, that this is starting to organize. So first things first, what has kept this from organization to this point? There's an upper-level low-pressure area right about there is where it's centered, and it's bringing in some southwesterly wind shear. So the center of the storm is right about here. Because of that wind shear, the activity has been pushed to the north and east of the center. Tropical systems want to become vertically stacked. They want the thunderstorm activity to sit right over the center, and that allows them to develop properly. So while that thunderstorm activity is being pushed away from the center, that's keeping this from strengthening. That low, though, is headed out of the picture, and with that, it will start to come together, I think. We are seeing signs of perhaps a little bit of circulation going on here as we hone in on the satellite, seeing a little bit of motion from west to east, right about there, seeing a little bit of movement that way, and then again. So it looks as though there's a little area low pressure centered right around there, but to this point, the NHC has been unable to find that well-defined, closed center of circulation, and as such, they have not named that an official tropical cyclone or tropical depression just yet. But here are the steering influences going forward. So yeah, the low pressure area in the Gulf of Mexico, high pressure centered over the Tennessee Valley. That's going to allow this to move in a general northwestern direction through the day today, even into parts of tomorrow, moving across the northwestern Bahamas and headed towards the coast of Florida. But from there, it all sort of breaks down, unfortunately, by the time we get to the weekend, Saturday and Sunday. So the area of high pressure over the Tennessee Valley backs off a little bit, and high pressure from the Atlantic starts to wedge in. Combined with that low from the south, yeah, we have competing flow here. We have the high in the Atlantic trying to push it north. We have the high above it, keeping it from moving north, not to mention the low giving a little kick from the south too. So that's going to lead to, not too much unlike Dorian, a slow-moving, sort of meandering system as we go into next week. The big question then is, where exactly does this go? If the center of the storm comes on shore, once again, we've lost our background map here. If the center of the storm comes on shore in Florida, then this probably weakens pretty quickly. Marginal tropical storm at that potential landfall, and then weakening back to a depression, maybe even just an open wave of low pressure again shortly after that. However, if it stays over the waters of the Atlantic, it could take on further strength, and I'll show you one solution that sort of says that here. And then it feels that weakness in the ridge to the north and eventually takes a turn to the north and east. But it's going to be slow. We're talking even by Wednesday. This is sitting off to the east of the Savannah area if it follows that center path. It could be further west, could be further east. If it's overland, even if this weakens, this is a couple days of some heavy rainfall for the southeastern U.S. If it stays over the waters, marginal impacts for the U.S. outside of some rough surf. So let's hope that this does stay over the water. Now, here's that one solution I was talking about, the European forecast model. And it sort of latched onto this solution starting yesterday, when still a good many models, including the American GFS model, was showing an open wave coming across South Florida, bringing us much rainier weekend here in Southwest Florida. Well, it latched onto yesterday morning, the low coming together and sort of staying off the East Coast and tracking north. If you've been tracking this thing, many indications where this could get into the Gulf and impact the northern Gulf Coast. Not so. The European now 3 straight runs showing this solution. That's what we call a trend. When we try to forecast these things, we look for model trends. You don't just want to go off one run of one model, but if that same model, especially a trusted one like the European, saying the same thing time after time after time, now you have more confidence in that model solution. So that's by Saturday afternoon. The center, unfortunately, moving across the Abacos and Grand Bahama, many of the same areas impacted by Dorian. This will be nothing like Dorian, of course, although it is going to bring some wind and some rainfall there, the last thing they need. Continues to move off to the north and slow moving. There's 3 a.m. It's still sitting off the east, basically due east of Cape Canaveral at that point in time, and then continues to swirl to the north, gaining strength as it sits over the very warm waters of the Gulf Stream, perhaps even a Category 1 hurricane at that point in time on this model. Here's the winds would look like, and yeah, per that European model, showing you gusts there up over hurricane strength, 76-mile-per-hour gusts in the waters, but close to the coast, much lower winds. We're talking maybe tropical storm force gusts in Cape Canaveral. Elsewhere, 30-mile-per-hour winds. Back in Southwest Florida, it's still going to be gusty, but that's more driven by that high to our north and the low off to our east. Pressure gradient winds gusting to about 25, 30 miles per hour. I don't think we're talking tropical storm force winds. I don't think we're talking much in the way of rainfall here any longer. We're still going to see some showers and thunderstorms this weekend in Southwest Florida, especially Saturday afternoon, but it's not going to be a washout. Start the day dry. It's really just going to be like a typical rainy season day for all intents and purposes. We start dry. We see scattered to widespread storms during the afternoon, lasting a little bit longer in some cases than that typical rainy season setup. But there are watches and warnings out. This is why the Hurricane Center puts out the potential tropical cyclone advisories, because now they can put out watches and warnings before a storm even is able to form up, but they anticipate it will. So, yeah, unfortunately, those warnings out, tropical storm warnings, for the northwestern Bahamas, including the Abacos, including Grand Bahama, and there are tropical storm watches out from Jupiter Inlet north to the Flagler-Volusia County line. I suspect those will be extended further northward, but don't expect to see them go very far inland, because even if this does become a tropical storm, it's going to be weak. The wind field will be very small. You have to get right near that center to get those winds in that range. So, takeaways. This is likely to become Tropical Storm Humberto late tonight, Saturday, perhaps even holding off until late Saturday, but it is expected to become a tropical storm. The center is going to be close to Florida, if not moving on shore on the east coast of Florida over the weekend, and from there it's going to start to move very slowly. It's going to move that steering wind. If it's over the southeast, it weakens, but it still would likely be a rain producer. If it stays over the Atlantic, a stronger storm, but chances are then it would miss a landfall, hopefully miss a landfall, and stay out over the waters of the Atlantic and eventually track out to the north and east. Of course, even by Monday, this will still likely just sort of be swirling up there by Georgia and the Carolinas and eastern Florida. So by Monday, I'll be back with another look at this developing storm. Until then, I'm meteorologist Jim Dickey. Have a great weekend.